Before we get going for today's discussion, let's reflect back and find out, remember, try to remind ourselves as to what we accomplished in the third session of Bhaja Govindam. In that past session, we studied only two, but very, very important verses. One that impelled us to dwell upon the truth of life and try to learn as to who we really are. And the second verse, which emphasized the glory of Satsanga, glory of good company of good people, especially those people who understand the subject. We learn that our relationship in our life, different kinds of relationship we have with different people, are merely the roles that we play. While playing those roles, we understand there should be love, there should be charity, there should be compassion, and there must be service. The important thing to remember is we learn that during such a relationship, they should be all free from demands or intense attachment, because such relationship can lead to dependence. We also learned we must try and find out as to who we really are and our purpose in this human life. Even though these family relationships are absolutely important and essential in this world, those should not be pursued to the total exclusion of fulfilling all the four goals of human life, four purusharthas, including moksha. As the couple created security by making friends, having a family and wealth, enjoyed the pleasures of life with the norms set by the society, should never forget the ultimate goal they set for themselves when they got married. And that goal was to be liberated while still living, moksha. We must, in this human life, realize our true divine identity and come to live as such. In the second verse, we spend a great deal of time discussing the glory of satsanga. We noted that thinking process brings about the discriminating and thoughtful mind they call kashchit dhira. I referred to Kathopanishad at that time, who want to see themselves pratyagatmanam aishchakam. Those who want to see the self, want to understand who they are, withdraw their attention from their usual preoccupations in the pursuit of material wealth because they desire immortality. What is the word that is used in Kathopanishad? Amrutatvam ichcha. They really want immortality. However, as they withdraw, they do not become isolated. The relationship with the world has to simply change. That relationship is not of exploiting, but that of giving. It's a relationship of worship. They both acquire abiding mind, both meaning husband and wife, a mind with utmost faith and shraddha. It is not a blind faith, but instead utmost willingness to advance their studies till their goal is reached through personal conviction. They maintain a positive outlook that they would reach that goal to answer the fundamental questions of life while entertaining no negative thoughts whatsoever. Shraddha also means absolute confidence, utmost sincerity to pursue God, and intense longing to reach that ultimate goal. Then we studied step by step how to achieve that goal. First we said satsangatve nitsangvatna. Sangha means company or attachment. Nitsangatva means detachment or non-attachment. So satsanga is the company of good that creates freedom from unhealthy attachment or attachment of the wrong type of individuals who can unfortunately influence our behavior. When there is attachment of good or good people, the detachment from the bad people. Thus, when we keep the company of good, we slowly grow out of the influence of the bad. Attachment is dependence upon the world. Very often, giving up attachment mistakenly means giving up contact with the family or running away from this world. But only the dependence on them has to be given up. To have love for your family and friends is not an attachment, but being dependent on them is to be given up. With a sense of overwhelming or unhealthy attachment is withdrawn and selfish desires have dissipated, the mind becomes clear, slowly becoming free from moha or delusion. When the delusion is no longer there, all the delusory false values gradually disappear. A state of nirmohatmam, clarity of vision returns, and the mind gets pure. We learned what is meant by purification of the mind. Ragadveshas are unhealthy attachments and aversions are the impurities in our mind. Such a pure mind without those impurities enjoys peace, serenity, and absolute composure. Just as water becomes transparent when the dirt is removed, its mind becomes pure, serene, and then we can enjoy the tranquility of our mind while we are alive. This pure mind understands the truth. Nirmohatve nishchalatatvam. The tranquil mind becomes objective. Then is able to understand exactly what the scriptures tell us. Until then, whatever we hear, whatever we read is processed by mind distorted by raga dveshas, likes and dislikes. When those distractions are no longer there and the mind is clear, that mind is able to appreciate the unfoldment of the vision of the scriptures. Our mind understands very clearly what the scriptures reveal. One slowly develops an abidance in that knowledge, and with that, there's a freedom even while when one is alive. And that is Nishchalatve Jivan Mukti. That's what we studied carefully last session rather. And today I plan to discuss 4 verses, the last of 4 verses that came out of the mouth of Sri Shankara, expounding the Vedantic knowledge. So these are the first 13 verses that came out from his mouth when he saw that old Pandit singing those rules in grammar in Sanskrit. The 10th verse goes like this. Vayasi gate ka kama vikara, shushke nire ka samsara, kushushke nire ka kasara, shine vitte ka parivara, nyate tatve ka samsara. I'll take one phrase at a time, putting Sanskrit together. When the youth is gone, vayasi gate, where is the room for lust and its play? Kaha, kama vikara. When the water is evaporated, shushke nire, where is the pond? Kasara. When the wealth is reduced or gone, where is your retinue? Shine vitte, kaha parivara. When the real understanding of oneself comes about, no longer is the continuous cycles of birth, growth, decay, disease, and death. Nyate tatve, understanding oneself, ka samsara. These 4 powerful statements, the last being the most important, clarify for us as to how and why one can be liberated from the continuous cycles of birth and death. When the individual is young and healthy, hormones in the body are flowing plentifully, wrinkles-free skin is tight, the abdominal muscles are as hard like a 6-pack and not as flabby as they usually are when one consumes 6-pack daily. Such immature youthfulness often leads to the acts of blinding passion and maddening lust. But as one grows older, hopefully wiser, such acts are no more. This is true since immature youthfulness is the cause and crazy acts of blinding passion are an effect. The idea is that when the cause is gone, its effect disappears. When there are no rains and water evaporates completely, the pond ceases to exist. Similarly, as the uncontrolled thoughts of sensual desires play in mind, the immature youth strives to fulfill them. When the individual matures and behaves according to the personal ethical values and social norms, inappropriate passionate activities gradually taper and finally cease to exist. When one grows old and retires, and the income diminishes or disappears, the friends and the relatives, supporters and admirers suddenly appear to seem to disappear from the scene completely. In short, the entire retinue who always showed up to share the wealth one brought home suddenly seems to vanish. Now, wealth here means money. In addition, of course, power, the position, any type of special talent or skill that you have. Only as long as these things are there with you, people look up to you, follow you. When the cause is no more, the effect is no longer there as well. And finally, the most important section of this verse, Nyate Tatve Ka Samsara. Samsara arises out of the self non-acceptance. We don't seem to like who we really are. In Sanskrit, that which constantly goes forward, revolves, or turns around is called samsara. Samyak sarati iti samsara. It's a motion from one birth to another, one accomplishment to another, one becoming different to another. Human beings always trying to become something different because the sense of self-rejections or self-non-acceptance. We just are not satisfied with the way we are. This complex arises because the human beings is a typically self-conscious being, unlike the animals. He's aware of his own limitations and hence considers himself to be inadequate. Hence, he tends to venture in the outer world where he hopes to become something, to receive some kind of recognition from others in order to gain some self-esteem. Self-non-acceptance arises out of the ignorance of our true nature. The great teacher Shankara is telling us emphatically that once that ignorance is no more, and one truly understands and realizes the tattva or the truth of the self as to who really we are, the need for samsara literally goes away. It's not only this ignorance, but also the false notions and misconceptions about ourselves that are also removed. As beautifully described and neatly studied and presented by Professor Rambachan in Nirvana Shatakam, our basic misunderstanding is that we are this body, mind, sense complex. And hence, we consider ourselves as limited beings, suffering all kinds of limitations and deficiencies. Therefore, we entertain many complexes that we human beings exhibit. Once we come to understand that we are simply the awareness, the integral part of cosmic awareness, Chit, which is ever present or immortal, Sat, is always unlimited or complete and happy, Ananta and Ananda, we start searching. The individual is at peace. Individual one trying to become fully adequate and acceptable comes to realize that such individual was always there and already present within, just like the missing 10th person in that famous story. So there is no more need for this samsara. I'm sure you remember that story of the 10th person where 10 young disciples of a guru were protecting each other, and as they crossed the water, the leader of the group tried to count the number of people in that group, and he counted 9, and he got completely upset because the 10th person was missing. Everybody did the same thing, and everybody counted up to 9, till a wise person came by, and he said, the 10th person is you. So exactly the story is this way, that what we are trying to find out, want to become awareness, which is immortal and always happy, we already are. Nyate tatve ka samsara. The next verse is, the topic I would say, know your true nature to be Brahman. I'll sing in Sanskrit first. Ma kuru dhanajana yauvana garva harati nimeshat kala sarvam. Maya mayamidam akhilam hitva brahmapadam tvam pravisha viditva. I'll take Sanskrit section piece by piece. Take no pride. Ma kuru gauram. Ma kuru garvam. In your worldly possessions, dhana, people you command, jana, and the beauty of your youthfulness, yauvana. Time loots away all these in a moment. Kalaha, nimeshat, sarvam harati. After knowing the illusory nature of these, mayamayam idam akhilam hitva, you, tvam, should realize the state of Brahman, Brahmapadam viditva, and then enter into it, pravisha. Most human beings are bogged down because of their false vanities and hollow conceits. They try to impress others by bragging about their wealth or large amount of employees that they hire and command their respect and the youth and beauty they possess. They brag because that way they get recognition. They feel good. And the wealth that I'm talking about here includes power, position, name, fame, etc. They don't realize at that time when they're bragging that unfortunately that the Father Time can and always does instantly loot all these so-called accomplishments. Shankaracharya is reminding here, we should not take pride in anything in our life because we are not its author. Besides, they're not ours to claim. One can be proud of something that one has created or something one owns and controls. We have not created this yovana. We haven't created this dhana. Only because of the chance, the wealth is with us. We either inherited it or earned it. Even if we have earned the wealth, it's only because we possess certain abilities that came through God's grace. These wealth-generating abilities and skills that we possess are not created by us. We know that it is the gift or the grace of God that we received this body in the first place. When we were born, we had no knowledge whatsoever. We had no skill. We were all totally dependent. But only through the teachers that came along the way that we gained knowledge and learned these skills. These special individuals, the mentors, came in our life only through the grace of God. Even the wealth that we possess, including one's own body, does not belong to us. You remember the story? When somebody said, this is my own body, I own it. And of course, wife said, I own half of it. The bacteria in the body said, this is our generational property for generations. And the king said, I can get you in my army, so you're part of it. The boss said, 9 to 5, you're mine. So everybody claimed his body. And ultimately, the judgment simply was, you don't own your body, but you're simply the trustee of your body and your responsibility to make sure it remains well. As a matter of fact, Shri Krishna says in the 3rd chapter, Tairdattan pradayebhyo uyo bhukte stena evasa. The one who does not offer any prasad to the gods and others, but enjoys the natural gifts bestowed by gods alone, is considered a thief, a pakka chor. I'll tell you a story. This refers to why our teachers always have taught us we have to express our gratitude to gods, sages, teachers, forefathers, and fellow beings. That means Deva, Rishi, Pitaras, Pitru, Bhutayana. We have to pay all that runa in our life. The story goes like this. One day, an enlightened individual with a halo around his head came to sit down underneath a banyan tree. And the people saw that, and the news spread like a wildfire. Because what was happening in that region was the rains were not there for a few years. There was severe drought. They was facing famine and many people were dying. The king had not helped them at all. So they gathered around these enlightened individuals because they knew by historical tradition that when good person like this show up, usually the good luck follows it very quickly. When the wise man, enlightened man, saw all these people approaching and getting around him, saw how famished they were, how poor they were, how hungry they were, and his heart literally melted with love and compassion. Seeing their plight, he said in deep and melodious voice, God has declared again and again in his various incarnations that God does not dwell in the heaven or in the temples built by man. God is always ever present in the temple of our hearts. All men are the living temples of God, and helping our fellow men is a real act of worship. Where else can we go? They are standing in front of me, so many of them in these various forms. In the meanwhile, the king was a little sore in his heart to learn from his messengers that the sage had refused the royal invitation to come and stay with him in the royal golden temple. His vanity was hurt and wounded. So he arrived personally to meet this holy man and take him first to his royal temple. Holy man said, how can I go into the temple where I do not find my God? Hundreds of people die in your kingdom of hunger, and you do not spend any resources on these people who need it. You tend to spend it on the luxuries and the golden temple that you built. Go, help your people first who need help, and walked out of that audience. When you do that, I shall return back. Again, you can remember, the king who collected all the taxes from the people, his first responsibility was to his fellow beings to make sure that they were properly paid. In continuing the verse, Kalaha Nimeshat Sarvam Harati. Time loots away all these in a matter of moment. What they erringly thought that they earned simply on their own and will possess forever can simply disappear. Unfortunately, death can be in a brief moment rob us of that help. Money can be stolen or wealth can disappear with the Wall Street crash or natural calamity. Friends or even family members may disappear from that scene or even disown you. A brilliant person can lose his memory or knowledge following an accident or unsuccessful surgery on brain. In due course of time, one's beauty and youthfulness is replaced by the wrinkles, gray hair, and old age. I know. I heard about hair coloring and Botox. But as a physician, I know their limitations. News media or power that can destroy one's popularity, reputation overnight. It's not that one should not enjoy all these wonderful gifts, but one must never get overly attached to them and consider them to be permanent in nature. Enjoy what you have in the present without having any kind of pride. Most importantly, to have humility and recognize the contribution of so many other beings to the things that you think are really yours and you created them. Consider yourself to be lucky and blessed, temporary trustee of your wealth, youthfulness, beauty, and knowledge. Share that with others, especially those who may not be as fortunate as you are. He continued, Mayamayam idam akhilam mitva, knowing the illusory nature of all these. We must realize this creation is a product of Maya. Maya means magic. In practical understanding, this creation is transient, there's no permanence. Now, it's not that it does not exist, but since it is transient, is bound to get destroyed over a period of time as compared to the God himself, who created it, its permanence is very limited. It's not permanent. You must recognize that this youth or wealth, the retinue of friends and family are transient, and hence everlasting happiness will not come through them. We must renounce them. Now, I know you get a little edgy when I say renounce them. In Vedanta, renunciation is not an action. It is a state of mind, a certain attitude toward the things of the world. In renouncing, we do not discard something outwardly. When we give up something outwardly and still feel the sense of loss, it only means that we have not really given up it inwardly. Renunciation is nothing but seeing everything for what really it is, knowing its true worth of the things. So it is important is how you think about it. It is the attitude that's important, not the actual entity. Now, there are two kinds of problems in life. One of them is centered upon the self and relates to the subject. The other is centered upon the non-self and relates to the objects around us. Problems such as hunger, poverty, illiteracy are centered around the object or the non-self. You need the objects such as wealth, friends, youth, etc. in order to solve such problems. However, the problems of sadness or sorrow, fear, inadequacy, limitation, or bondage are centered upon the self. These problems can be solved only through self-knowledge. And hence, Shankara tells us, Brahma Padam Viditva. You should realize the state of Brahman, then enter into it, pravisha. Having learned that the entire world or this creation is illusory and transient, you recognize that this Brahman is the only thing that remains constant and never changes. As we said before, Brahma Satyam Jagad Mithya. Once we come to realize and understand what our true nature is, which is simply, as I mentioned earlier, Chit or awareness, which is always there, Sat, complete, unlimited, and happy, Anant Anand. With that understanding, the human beings stay well grounded, overcome all the problems of limitations and inadequacy. The next verse is, I can title it as the time sports, life ebbs away. Dinaya minyo sayam prata, shishar vasanto udarayata, kala kridati gachati ayu, tadapina munchati ashavayu, Bhajagovindam, Bhajagovindam. There's unquestioned beauty at the sunrises in the morning and in the sunsets in the evenings. The dawn grows into a bright sunny day, but soon wanes away to a mellow dusk. Every sunrise and sunset are different and beautiful in its own way. And personally, I love all of them. And I've been criticized many times for having too many pictures of the sunset, which I enjoy the most. There's unique beauty that of changing seasons as well that enthralls us. The flowers and fresh greenery of the spring, the glorious sunshine, warmth, coupled with abundant fruits of the summer, the vibrantly colorful fall season, and peaceful, serene, snowy landscapes of the winter are really enchanting. But each one of these beautiful seasons have finite existence. Surely, they come and go again and again. The time plays tricks on us. We get totally submerged in our daily activities, enjoy all these seasons, considering them most important. And unfortunately, in our life, we tend to follow only these things in our life, talking about weather. Often we forget that our human life is such a rare and precious gift that must be utilized to seek the greatest opportunity of reaching moksha. And before long, the old age creeps up on all of us. Remember a lot of examples through the stories and history. Young Nachiketa in Kathopanishad turns down the offers of material wealth, sensual pleasures, and a very long life from Lord Yama, the god of death, because these things never lead to everlasting happiness and contentment that Nachiketa was seeking. He was smart to understand that not going to last. He, after getting the knowledge, was consoling his own dad after receiving the wisdom from Lord Yama. The things which are born must die and perish away, soon to be born again. We too, as human beings, have to prepare ourselves for the loss of our close friends, family members, including our parents, siblings, even our spouses. This is so because even though one may escape all the hardships in the life, such as Gautam Buddha did in his life in the palace, when he got a chance to get out, he soon realized that old age and death are inevitable for every individual. Unfortunately, this ever-ending pursuits of material objects and sensual pleasures continue with us regardless how old we get and how strong and weak the condition of the body is for most of the individuals. In reality, none of these pursuits ever lead to lasting happiness. We must learn to live intelligently. It's not that you don't enjoy the material pleasures, but the most important thing, change the attitude and never get dependent on those material pleasures. We continue to struggle all through our life, ever tangled up in the never-ending materialist desires, often till the very day that we die, and never reach that coveted goal of liberation. That's exactly how Shankaracharya is lamenting in this verse. Now here Shankaracharya is expressing his frustrations and directs us to use precious and human life for the purpose of reaching the choicest, ultimate goal or purushartha of gaining moksha before it's too late, since no one really exactly knows when we would die. Besides, moksha is only possible in the human birth. Even the celestials cannot, because that gift of free will of making choices is only available as a human being. And that, how does it come out? Dullavam trayamai vedat devanugrah hetukam. On the God's grace, these three unique graces of life. And what are those three graces? Manushyatvam, mumukshatvam, mahapurusha samshaya. That means being born as a human being, the intense desire to be liberated, moksha, and that comes about by the company of enlightened and good people. Important to pursue that goal well before our physical strength is lost and mental acuity is no more. That's why Shankaracharya is reminding us, do the prayers, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam. The final verse for this morning that we're going to study, Kate Kanta Dhanagata Chinta, Vatula Kim Tava Nasti Niyanta, Tri Jagati Sajjana Sangati Reka, Bhavati Bharvana Tavadre Nauka, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam. Let's break it down one by one. Oh, distracted one, Vatula. Why is there worry for your wife, spouse, Kate Kanta, and pertaining to the loss of wealth, Dhanagata Chinta? Is there not one who ordains and sets the rules and doles out the outcomes based upon individuals' actions? Kim Tava Niyantanasti is the association of good people alone that can serve in this world as a ship to safely cross the ocean of life, which includes all the changes that come about throughout this life, starting with birth and ending with death. Three Jagati, Sajjana Sankati Reka, Sajjana Sankati Eka, Bhavati, Bharvana Atarane Nauka. If you remember, a couple of sessions ago, we asked a similar question in verse 8. Who is your wife? Who are your children? We're advised to think about your own nature, that is Tattvam. Here Shankara is asking as to why one is always preoccupied with the thoughts of wife, family, and wealth. He continues to call this individual as Vatul. Vatul means one whose mind is under the spell of Vayu or wind, meaning one who is deluded, distracted, and suggests that he might think of Ardendra, Niyanta, who's above and beyond the perception. We erroneously seem to think that we are the ones who earn all this wealth with our hard work and talent and take care of everyone in the family, and the friend circle. This kind of erroneous thinking can be entertained even by esteemed individuals. Well, I'll tell you a story of Shivaji. Shivaji should be considered as a person who really protected the Hindus in India from the brutal aggression of Muslims who were trying to kill them or convert them and taking them away from the faith that they wanted to practice. One of those times when he was ruling the region that gave the protection to Hindus, there's a big famine. And Shivaji arranged for several social service projects, such as digging the wells, building water reservoirs, building bridges for the benefit of the people, and also giving them some kind of work to do and earn their livelihood. Even this wise, mature individual such as Shivaji, a thought arose in his mind. Oh, look at what I'm doing. If I was not there, what would happen to these people? With him was his guru, Samartha Ramdas. Samartha means who has special powers, is Samartha, capable. He sensed Shivaji's thoughts and expression on his face and asked Shivaji to bring a hammer and open a volcanic rock in front of him. Shivaji brought the hammer and finally opened that volcanic rock. What he found was a small cavity in that rock, and out came an insect, also carrying one little particle of grain. He asked Shivaji if he was providing that grain to that insect. When sheepishly Shivaji answered, "No, sir," Ramdas explained, "It is God taking care of that insect. It is God who created the insect, and therefore God also provides for it." Shivaji quickly realized that he had been unnecessarily proud in thinking that he was responsible for supporting all these people. It is the ordiner that is the real doer. When one's ignorance and arrogance, the individual takes pride in all the so-called accomplishments of one's life. Lord Shri Krishna says in the 9th chapter, 22nd verse, "Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yoga kshemam vahamyam." Those who devoutly worship me, ananya chintayo mam, always meditating on me, meditating on my transcendental form, I bring for them what they lack and preserve for them what they have. Yoga means bringing them for they lack, yoga, bring it together. And kshema is basically protecting, preserving what they have. The ordiner or Brahman in charge of yoga kshema, meaning bringing all the things to the devotees and protecting all that we already have, as I mentioned. And the individuals should not be wasting their time and energy on that, but instead utilize their time and energy to regain that knowledge about one's true nature, the Brahman. It is also emphasized in Kenopanishad 1.5. May you know that alone to be Brahman, which a person does not objectify through his mind, but by which the mind is known, and not this, that the people worship as an object. Yat manasa na manute, yenahur mana matam, tadeva brahmatvam vidhi, nedam yadi upasade. Of course, he's talking about mind, but again, he gives all the 5 different senses step by step. That's why 5 verses talking about that things are able to objectify, but it's the Brahman who is the one who allows you to objectify them. Finally, in this verse, the metaphor of the boat, nauka, is truly appropriate. Now, traveling over the open seas, while in the boat, we are protected from the huge waves and dangerous creatures in the water. Guidance of an enlightened traditional guru, who himself was enlightened through the lineage of enlightened teachers, and association of many good individuals who also have again viveka, the capacity to ascertain what is right, what is not right or wrong, what is ethical and appropriate, what is inappropriate, and what is inappropriate. As we journey through the ocean of these three worlds, three jagati. What are those? Bhu, Bhuva, Swa. That means this world, the space, and the heavens. That knowledge keeps us in a constant state of happiness to navigate successfully through this treacherous ocean of life and protect us from drowning, dangerous storms, crazy creatures, icebergs, unexpected rock formations. Even though Adi Shankarcharya is addressing this advice to his disciples, who all chosen the path of renunciation, this advice is just as much meant for others who are married or grihasti like us. These verses, remember, are not coming out of Shankaracharya's mouth in a hermitage where only sannyasis live, but instead are coming out at a very public place where there were a far greater number of individuals who pursued the path of grihasti, including that old man cramming the rules of Sanskrit to gain the position of power and respect in the society. This is the last powerful verse that came out of mouth of Shankaracharya, first 13 verses. Because the next 14 verses, each of these 14 disciples will say that particular verse, explaining to Shankaracharya what they have learned over the last several years. To summarize, what we studied this morning is, initially the first verse was Nyate Tatve Kah Samsara. Where is this samsara? When the truth is relieved. Once the truth is realized, where is this samsara? Disappears. Brahmapadam tvam pravishaniditva. Know your true nature to be Brahman. Tat tvamasi. The third one was, as the time sports, life ebbs away. Don't miss the opportunity in this human life to get enlightened, because even people in the heavens are unable to get it. The human life is important. Manushyatva. And finally, think of Niyanta. Don't worry, be happy. Remember of the order. Maintain the company of good people. Sajjana Sangati is absolutely essential as we travel on the ship, the ocean of life. These are 4 important verses that we studied. I'll open up for questions and comments at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Shashi.
Thanks, Prasanna.
Yeah. So what you said was, if people ask me, who are you? I should not say Prasanna Kumar. What I should really say is, Asti, Bhati, Priyam, with Nama and Rupa.
Yeah.
We pay most attention to Rupa and not the inner equipment. You called it Satchidananda. In this society, as we move around, you constantly see this. If you go to the store, I am attracted to certain product because it says boldly, new and improved package. It looks good, but I have no idea what is inside. Only after I get home, then you realize it's the same old thing. Nothing has changed except the package is different. Yeah, except the package is different. So we are reinforcing in our own mind that packaging is more important, the container is more important than the content. In the human analogy, as you pointed out, while it is important to recognize that you are only housing the Satchidananda, does not necessarily mean you ignore the container. You have to take care of the container to enjoy Satchidananda. So that's my take. So we constantly have to remind ourselves not to be taken in by external appearances, even though they're important. We cannot ignore, we cannot neglect external appearances, but in our own mind, we should be sure who we are.